Ni hao, thank you for having me.
So when did you first come to New Zealand?
In the early 1980s, I was born and raised in Tonga, but my parents moved the whole family over here.
What was the most difficult part after migrating here?
Challenge I and my family had to face was language. The second issue that we faced as a family was, for me especially, the education system. I just didn't fit in, and it was really quite challenging. So I actually dropped out of school. The other challenge we faced as a family was actually finding a place to live. It took about 2 to 3 years before we could find a place that we could afford to rent. So there were many challenges.
So Minister, we noticed that you like red color very much. Is this any symbolism to your culture or something?
First of all, red is my favourite colour. Second of all, red is the colour of the flag of Tonga, but it is also the colour of the Labour Party. And as a Labour Party MP, you would find me wearing red in some way or form a lot. I also know that red is a really lucky colour in Chinese culture. So for today, I made sure that I wore a little bit of red.
How did you get into New Zealand politics in the first place?
I lived in the United States, in the state of Michigan, for 10 years. I married an associate professor, and he began his career in Michigan. But while I was there, I got into politics because I got into being involved in Obama's campaign. Yeah, so when I moved back to New Zealand, a lot of them came to me and said that I really should get actively involved in politics here.
What are the problems they are facing currently?
There are so many challenges, but one of the first things that I'm told from ethnic minority communities is they want to live in a safe community. So that is actually one of my top priorities, is ensuring that we do all that we can as a government, and it's incumbent on me as Minister of Ethnic Communities, but I also work with other ministers, Minister of Police, Minister of Justice, and what we're trying to do is, what can we do collectively? What kinds of policies can we do to ensure that our people, ethnic communities, feel safe, but as well as that, just people in all of our communities, that they feel safe. One of the other issues that I face as a minister in this portfolio is the language barrier. I'm told by a lot of ethnic community folks that when they don't speak very good English, or when they speak English but it's not actually really good English, it's hard for them, challenging for them to access various services, whether they be health services or social services, because of the language issue. And so we do what we can. Our Office of Ethnic Communities has a fund that ethnic community groups can apply to. We also have a language line that people actually reach out to assist with some of these language barriers. One of the things that I'm also focused on is ensuring that we have better representation of ethnic communities in as many of our state boards as we can. And whenever I'm asked to go and give speeches, I also try to, when I'm speaking to young people or when I'm speaking to ethnic communities, I encourage many of them to consider getting into the public service. We know, looking at the statistics of government departments, that not that many with ethnic community backgrounds actually work for the state sector public service in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I'm always encouraging more people. There's lots of skilled people in the ethnic communities, just not many of them are choosing to work for the public sector.
The thing is that we heard a lot of our readers that they do want to make a contribution or to be volunteered in the public service, but they don't know what the access is. They don't know how to get involved into it.
Is I'd encourage you to send your CVs in. Please send your resumes in to the Office of Ethnic Communities, because in that way, we in our database, when state sector boards come up, whether they be boards in health or whether they be boards in housing or in education or in the building and construction sector, I've got 6 boards that sit under that particular portfolio, then depending on your skill and your qualification, we then would be able to, from the Office of Ethnic Communities, make the recommendation that you would be considered for those boards. I'm not making a promise that everyone who puts their name in is going to be appointed, but if your name is not on our Office of Ethnic Communities list, then we can't recommend you.
Do you think that the racism towards the ethnic groups is quite common in New Zealand?
Unfortunately, what we know is that racial discrimination and racism exists. It exists in this country, in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It exists in many other countries. Unfortunately, that is the case. We know that there are people, when they say go and try to rent a house, for instance, there is unconscious bias, unfortunately, that some landlords have. You know, some landlords just prefer to rent their houses out to certain people. This, unfortunately, is a fact that we're trying to address in our country. That the first thing we need to do is to recognise that it exists in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and then secondly, we need to also engage with all of our ethnic communities. First, recognise that this is an issue, racial discrimination, and second of all, just respect other people's cultures and the things that they value, because we all see life in a different way, but we all should be respectful of each other.
Lisa, you are also the Minister for Building and Construction, right?
Yes.
So what's the main problem of the construction industry currently?
One of the number one issues I'm facing is we don't have enough skilled people here today. I'm told by my ministry that we are short by at least about 30,000 skilled people. And so we know that short term, we're going to have to look at bringing in some of these skilled folks from overseas, but long term, the solution has to be that we train our own. Another challenge that we're facing in building and construction, and putting on my associate housing hat on, we don't have enough houses, and so we need to build a whole lot more houses. But what I'm told as a new government coming in, we wanted to know exactly how big is this issue, how big is this problem of housing, and we know from the experts that we commissioned, they've told us that we are short by 71,000 houses, and that we're short by 45,000 houses here in Auckland. So it's a huge challenge, and we have come in as a government saying that we would like to build 10,000 new homes a year. However, I go back to my first and foremost challenge in this portfolio is coming up with what can we do to train as many of our own workers to get to the 30,000 skilled people that we need. I would like to say to our Chinese community my gratitude and my thanks. I know that Chinese people have lived in Aotearoa, New Zealand for many, many years. You've migrated here since the 1860s. So there are many third, fourth and fifth generation Chinese. We know from the 2013 census that there were 170,000 Chinese people living in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I'm looking forward to the census that was collected this year, because I know that number would have increased a lot. Can I also say that I'm thankful, truly thankful, that China is the largest trading partner for Aotearoa, New Zealand today. And on that note, I'm also grateful that it was the Labour Party under the leadership of the former Prime Minister Helen Clark that negotiated, finalised under the assistance of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade at the time, the Honourable Phil Goff, that actually finalised that very first trade agreement. I believe that that was, one of the main reasons why we are where we are now, having China as our greatest trading partner. But can I just overall just say thank you to all of you in the Chinese community for everything that you do, for the assistance that you give, both here in Aotearoa as well as the great partnership that we have formed as a government in New Zealand with China. Thank you. Cheers.